As an author, that's really kind of all you have. You've produced a work and you hope that people will read it and it will be successful and you are able to get something back. I came to Nairobi to do a masterclass at the NBO Lit Fest, and after having a wonderful session with a lot of culture enthusiasts, many of them came to have a chat with me afterwards, and this one lovely lady brought a book for me to sign, and she put it in my hands, and this is the copy. And the minute I saw this edition of The Secret Life of Baba Segi's Wives, I saw the front cover, I looked at the back, I knew it was a pirated copy. So I looked at it, I looked in the book itself, and I was just shocked by how it had been reproduced so poorly, but the fact that it had been produced this way at all. So I got talking to Muthoni of Soma Nami bookstore, and we decided to hit the streets and go and look at some of those book vendors, because I was really curious. I've always boasted that my novel had never been pirated, not even in Nigeria. So it was a bit of a shock to the system. Well, I could see that the width was slightly longer than the actual one. I could see the way that the title was written, in small letters in this way, using probably Arial. This is not how it appeared or appears on the American hardback edition that's been copied. The graphics and the illustrations are very much the same. And looking at the back cover, that's pretty much the same as well, except, so you've got the blurbs. However, my name is spelt Shoneyin here. So my name was spelt wrong. And when you look at the cover, it's still got the William Morrow, and that's the American publisher. It's an imprint of HarperCollins. But when you look at the bottom, all the other details have been sliced off. So Muthoni and I went to CBD. It's a nice sort of really long street with lots of book vendors, which, to be honest, I found really impressive, because you don't see them like that anymore in Lagos. And I was so curious. I wanted to know what the setup was like. So we got to the first one, and we asked, we could see, we didn't even need to ask. We were just looking at all the different books that we recognized had been written by different African authors. And there were different versions of mine. So we went in total probably to about 20 different vendors. We kind of were sweating through the Nairobi street. but we were both really curious, and Muthoni was as well. And every single stall that we stopped at, every single stand had an edition of The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives. So there was this one, which is kind of like the American cover, the American hardback cover. And then we found this one as well, which is the UK cover. But however, with the American, the back cover is American. So it's exactly the same, but my name is spelled correctly. My name is spelled correctly on this edition, but it's, as you can see, it's basically the same design. So that was our experience, and it wasn't just my novel. It was several writers. I mean, surprisingly, some writers who have only just recently been published in Nigeria. So there were, I think, consistently throughout, you would find a copy of The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives and Nana Dakoa's book, The Sex Lives of African Women. So everywhere we went, you would always see those two. And in addition, you would see the books by Chika Onigwe. I saw copies of Ogadima. I saw Chimamanda Adichie's books, No Violet Bulawayo. There were several. I mean, it was mind-boggling, to be honest. Shocking. Yeah. The sad thing about all of this for me as a writer is that I'm actually quite happy in a way that people seem to be interested in books, and that books are in such high demand that you have so many vendors selling them on street corners. I mean, that's really fascinating, and it says a lot about the reading culture in Kenya. But I think when you look at some of the trouble that we've had in Nigeria, a lot of it's the cost. It's because when you come to, a beautiful bookstore like this, where you're selling original books, some people might think those books are too expensive for me. Let me see what I can do, where I can get it cheaper. However, and this is something I have realized, a lot of the people who buy pirated books don't realize that the books are pirated. They are just buying a book and probably thinking they've come into some luck to be able to find the book at a much reduced price. In my opinion, this industry of the pirating books is driven by two things. So one is demand, which means there is a demand for these books, which is a positive thing. But it's also driven by greed, and it is criminal. I mean, pirating books is a criminal offense, and the people who do this definitely, should be held accountable. However, there is a slightly different aspect to it that I suppose people don't think about when they're buying these books, or it might just be ignorance. But when you write a book, you sign, as an author, you sign a contract with a publishing house. And when you sign that contract, it's an agreement that for every copy that is sold of this book, I get a certain amount of money in royalties. So it might be, anything from 8% to 12% to 15%, depending on the publisher and the type of book. But I know, for instance, that every edition that is sold in this bookstore, something is coming back to me. And sometimes as an author, that's really kind of all you have. You've produced a work, a piece of art, you've put it out into the world, and you hope that people will read it and it will be successful, and you are able to get something back for what you produced. But when people buy these editions, nothing comes back. Every penny that's generated goes into the pockets of the criminals. So people who buy from them are, in essence, enabling they're enabling criminality. And that's really very unfortunate. And they also need to know that they are liable. So if you're caught with a pirated edition, nobody wants to know that you didn't know where you could get it. It's like you're handling goods, you're handling basically stolen goods. It's like a stolen work of art, and that's why it's also dangerous. So I have to say that I am so appreciative of the sort of interest that this book has generated and garnered in Kenya and in other parts of the African continent. But if you do want to buy this book, and if you want to encourage me to write a second book, you all keep asking me, where's my second book? If you want me to write that second book, then you've got to make sure that I am not being cheated out of my royalties. And the way to do that is to go to a reputable bookstore like Nami, which is where I am now. You can see they've got just about everything and it's so beautiful. You can smell the books. Come here for the smell. Go to a bookstore and ask for the book and you'll see this is the UK cover that I think most people in Kenya have. So get it from Nami so that I can write that second book. Scavenging trip. So we found this one, which was interesting as well because I think this is the US cover, but when you look at the back, it's the back of the UK edition. So this is by Novale Olawayo. This is a relatively new book by Ukamaka Lisakwe. And of course we saw this one by Chimamanda. But this was probably one of the most disappointing because we would look at the books and open them up. So when you look at this one, for instance, you can see that the binding is just awful. But then, this is the fun part. The very first page is chapter 38. So it starts at chapter 38. So when you've made your way to the end of the book, you then go back to, do you know that they didn't put any pages on?
Oh gosh.
There are no page numbers.
Oh wow. That's too much work.
No page numbers. Then it's got a table of contents, which kind of, can you see? This is the table of contents. It appears in the middle of the book and then very kindly, that's when they start chapter 1. So you first have to read the book to the end before you now then start from the beginning, which is really a rip-off. Even, for the person who buys this edition, I feel sad for them that they have to buy, such a badly made and such a poorly thought out edition. It's really not worth it. It's not pretty. It's not the kind of book you want to have in your bookshelf. And unless you're into self-flagellation, maybe reading books, giving yourself all the spoilers first before going to the beginning, then this is not the kind of book that you want to read or you want to buy. It's a complicated industry. This publishing industry, printing industry on the African continent. And when I think of when I remember the journey yesterday, for instance, and all the different vendors that we spoke to, I didn't think that they were themselves criminals. And they are not the people I think that should be punished because I suppose they don't even know that these books are pirated. So what's important is to get to the very beginning of the production line, where this all starts, who are the people who are behind it. I think that's the best approach. And the other side of that is it's just another call for the way that I see it on how much on this continent we need to get ourselves together when it comes to printing and publishing. We need to print and publish books in and on the continent, get so good at it to the point where the price point is accessible to the people who want to read these books. That's what I'm trying to do in Nigeria, and I'm really, really excited to share my thoughts on it. I'm not particularly interested in printing in India or in China. I understand that we have to import books. Sometimes when they're books, we want our people to be knowledgeable, to know what is happening, in the rest of the world. So yes, you bring in books by different authors from other regions of the world. But when it comes to African writers, if you're an African writer, you retain the African rights of your work so that an African publisher can publish a local edition that is accessible to your people on the African continent.